Well, hello and welcome to On the Colour Couch. And I'm really excited because it's my first gardener, first and colourful gardener, probably the most colourful gardener in the UK, and it is Lee Birchmore. If he looks familiar, you might be like me, an absolute lover of Garden Rescue, which is on BBC. In fact, I'm someone who it's my guilty pleasure. Like I binge watch them when the series comes out, and I absolutely love them. And as we get in and speaking, we'll no doubt have a chat about the format of the show and what the purpose of the show is and really what its intention is. But just to say right now that Lee has fantastic courses, which there'll be links at the bottom for you to be able to go to his Instagram. But without further ado, welcome, Lee. It's absolute pleasure to have you on the Colour Couch.
Well, thanks for having me. I mean, you said my name wrong, but I will forgive many sins because it's quite.
Oh,
I thought I can't stop you because you had such a great introduction.
so it's Birch Hill, isn't it? No,
Burkhill.
Birch
It's
Hill.
yeah.
I just said it complete.
Do you know I've been called a lot worse and I answer to a lot less. So it's
And Birchmore, that's a friend of mine. I've got a really good friend.
But yeah,
Oh,
thanks for having me and such a warm introduction to my colourful gardening ways.
yes, no, absolutely. So, I'm really just really thrilled that you say yes because, when you reach out to people that are well known, especially off the TV, you kind of you send out the email and then you kind of cross your fingers and hope that they say yes and you get an answer back. And you replied straight away, so I was like, yes, it was just fantastic, fantastic. Um, so just before we dive into the questions, I think one of the first things I did want to ask is if for people who don't know BBC Garden Rescue, and I know you're a award-winning designer and you're far more than this show, but this is probably where people, where they first get to know you.
Yes, yeah.
Um, could you just sum up what the show is, the vision of the show, like the aim of the show?
Yeah, of course. So Garden Rescue is a BBC One gardening show, stroke makeover show. So it populates a part of the day in the afternoon and it takes a client with a specific need or trouble in the garden. So usually these are people who've got a problem garden or a problem space and they're scratching their heads and think, I don't know what to do. And the whole aim of the show is to get them to a design that they love and then watch the process as it's built. But to make things a bit trickier, there's two designers on every show and we compete against each other to give our vision for said client with the brief as to what we would do with that space. So
Mhm.
you've always got this juxtaposition of two usually very different designs, approaches, planting palettes, and of course colour. And then the client picks one, they pay for it. So all that comes from the client. So they're invested in making sure that they pick the design that works for them and pick the designer that they have, I suppose, the biggest connection with for that space. And then the whole show sort of tracks the design process, the client's needs and wants, and then the reveal, and then the garden build. So it's a rocket of a show between someone not knowing what to do and then seeing the finished result.
Fabulous. And that's something I did not do notice that they do pick very different designers. I can't remember his name, but there's the other guy that is
Chris.
Chris, very paid back almost. So he's the minimalist, and you're probably like the maximalist, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I get on really well with Chris, and Chris has got a very clean, very pared back approach. And interestingly, Chris is colourblind, and a lot of his choices
Oh,
are based on that fact, and he sees colours in a slightly different way, which leads to all sorts of jokes when my gardens win and the colours are all very contrasting. But yeah, he's minimalist. I am much more plant focused and function. So the first thing I do with any design, and all my clients will repeat that I just constantly say this is, what's the function of the garden? Because you can take it for granted that I will give you a beautiful garden, but I want to give you a functioning garden. So that the
mm,
beauty part is a given. I'm going to do that. So let's really drill down as to what do you want to do in it so that you will use it. Because a lot of the time I see beautiful gardens that have been designed aesthetically and even
Mm,
with the proper use of colour, but there's no real function. So they are a picture to look at rather than something to engage with. And so I really drill down to function and then using the colour wheel, go to town to make it as appealing and usable as possible.
mm. Because yeah, I love garden rooms. You know, where you, if I could, I would live out, I would rather live outside in a garden than live in a house.
Yeah.
And so I love it when, yeah, when garden rooms are created. So you're walking through and it's like you've got a second house, but completely outside. And in the UK, I mean, just to say for everyone that I'm based in Kent, so it's a bit, you know, it's relatively warmer here. Um, but yes, I would absolutely love to be able to just to have a whole house that is actually outside and live in garden rooms.
Mm.
That's kind of my dream. But if you want to live in weather, obviously, like from Australia, if you want to live in
Yeah.
warmer weather, then you've got the mosquitoes and the bugs. So you know, it's not a practical thing to do. But yes, my child self would absolutely just love to be the, you know, the fairy at the bottom of the garden and just live in a garden.
And I think that's, you've hit on a good point. Really good solid design will blend the house and the aesthetic of the house into the garden so that when you leave the back doors or the patio or the sliders, whatever, you feel like it's another room rather than, oh, we're now in a garden.
Mm,
The most favourite designs, and especially with texture and colour, take the lead from the aesthetic of the house so that the two things fit together. And that's where proportion comes in. And Chris from Garden Rescue always goes, oh, you're obsessed with proportion. And I am, because it's like if you get the proportions wrong, and the same with colour, if you get the proportion of colour
yeah.
wrong, suddenly things don't quite feel right or they feel off balanced and then you don't want to go there because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah, and that uncomfortableness is then the emotional uncomfortableness because
Yeah.
that's because color is emotion, and
Yes.
with me doing color psychology, that is what we're always looking for. We're always looking for balance. We're looking for harmony. We're constantly calibrating, and we need to know that that feels right. But also in the garden, you want to feel, you know, you want to feel nurtured, but you also want a garden that helps you to feel safe.
Mm.
Um, and you know, even if it's got those little secluded corners or nooks, or even if it's open, I mean, it depends what that means to you. But yeah, the colors, the design, everything is what we're looking to feel. And that's, I guess, when the you know, the people on the show that are picking which design they want to go with, there's a lot that is going through their mind on which one they end up going with.
Yes.
um
And sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating, and I don't think anyone would mind me saying that because obviously the design process is condensed for garden rescue. The interaction with the client is condensed. You don't have enough time to be able to explain to a client about the different connections with colour, such as contrast, monochromatic, analogous. So you're expecting them just to look at your design and that to make sense. So you do have to be quite careful with your colour choices because sometimes if you go in with a dynamic contrast and you know what it's going to do, it's going to liven things up, make someone feel excited and want to follow a path through the garden. But if the client doesn't understand that, they might look at it and go, well, I don't really like purple and orange together
yeah.
because they don't understand the principle, even though in reality they would probably love it and think this works really well. So with colour, it can be quite tricky for the show because I know the principle and what works, but without being able to
Mm,
consistently explain that to someone, it might just be down to one of those love it or hate it innate feelings, which you don't
yeah,
really get to explore. So,
yeah.
like you said about colour making you feel relaxed or awkward, I know that there are certain colour palettes that sometimes I would normally use that I won't use on the show because it will either be love or hate, yes or no, and I wouldn't want to swing the design based on that kind of colour use. But in the real world, I would
Mm,
certainly articulate and try and persuade a
yeah,
client that this will work for you because of this
mm.
psychological conscious reason. But
Yeah,
unfortunately, you just don't get the time on a show to be able to,
yeah,
help bring people along with colour theory and why
yeah,
certain people
yeah,
work and why
yeah,
they don't.
yeah, yeah. Is that because you want to win?
Well, I mean, it's very competitive, but
It must be. It must
yeah,
be.
I always think, well, how do I get the maximum benefit, not just for the clients, but for the viewers? So it's like if I can't, articulate a certain colour association because the show kind of goes, it's a bit technical, then I will, drop that and move on to the plant association instead. So it gets the
Yeah.
biggest
Yeah.
bang for the buck for both the client and the audience. But as you can probably tell, you could set me off in any design term and I, enthuse about it and try and explain it because the biggest driver for me as the garden ninja, garden designer, has been to educate both my
Mm,
clients, but also the wider population. So garden design is a luxury. It can be expensive. It's probably the last thing you think of when it
mm,
comes to your home, your garden, because it's a cost that you've probably never considered before. There's other things you want to spend your money on. So all of my written work, my YouTube channel, Instagram, blog, it's all about trying to open up that knowledge, whether it is colour, design, proportion, style, how to even build a garden to the masses, knowing
mm.
that I'm just going to get my own paying clients. I can't work for everyone, but I would love it if, on my tombstone it would say he helped educate people in gardening and design, regardless of whether they pay me for it, because I just think it's
Yeah.
really important to understand those things, and you'll have a much nicer, beautiful life if you understand
Mm,
something
mm, mm.
rather
Yeah.
than just putting someone in to drop it in your back garden and then off they go.
Yeah. And it's really because you're making it, and the show, I think, is making it gardening accessible and not making it as if it's only in the realm of the elite or the rich. I mean, you can just have some uh, what do you call them? Gosh, window boxes.
Yeah,
You don't have to have a lot. I mean, look what people create in terrariums. I mean,
yeah,
that's a whole ecosystem. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it doesn't have to be big, and you get the most awkward plots. There are always these new builds on a slope with a path this big, and
yeah.
I look at them and go, all right, what are you going to do with that? And then all of a sudden it's just amazing then what the designers on the show end up doing. But I think my favorite bit is when they go back 3 years later, because in a garden you buy I mean, it depends on the budget, but quite often they're little plants because they've just come from the garden centre. And it really then comes into its own 2-3 years later when the garden's established. And then when they do the return, like when they see, it's usually Charlie that always goes back and does the return shows, doesn't she? And then you see them, how it's grown, and you're like, yes, like it's just, yeah, beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
That's it, and it's setting realistic expectations of people. And I'm glad they've started to do the return shows because sort of one of the niggles is that people say, well, if I had a team of 7 people and put all those plants in, yeah, my garden would look like that. But actually, it's you plant it for the reveal on TV, knowing that things are going to need to be moved around in later years as things grow and establish. But that in itself gives the client a reason to go out and garden. Whereas if you just planted it and it sat there static, as if like interior design, you put a sofa in, it's there, it doesn't grow, it doesn't move. But plants, they do. So you have to do something with them. And I think that's the beauty is we give them a garden that meets their needs, and then they have to do something with it. And that's
Mm.
really important to me, is to not just have gardens as static visuals that a gardener comes in and looks after for you. Like, let's get your hands dirty because you'll get so much more benefit out of it.
Oh, absolutely. I know I constantly have the gardener's manicure, which is the dirt under my nails. I don't wear gloves. I want to get in.
Yeah.
And my garden, I mean, now when I look at it, like every year I just go, oh, my garden's died because in December, January. And then my friends always go, just wait, because I'm still not used to that, even from Australia, because our gardens don't disappear. And then all of a sudden it starts coming back. And because I think, oh, I've got nothing, I've already bought 1,000 seeds, right? Which I then go and pot up and everything. And then I've got all these plants. And then my garden just goes absolutely crazy because I have got so many plants in it. And then come like August, September, I can hardly move. And I go, oh my God, where did all these plants come from? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm still not used to it. But Yeah, it is my absolute happy place. It brings me so much joy, and it really, really grounds me. And I think, with all this AI, I'm going to go a little bit on a soapbox moment.
Yeah.
All this AI, all this, electronics, digital, we are moving away from who we are. And I have this saying that I always say, that every step we take away from nature, we take away from ourselves. And I think this is increasing mental health issues, increasing loneliness, increasing this lack of connection. And when we lose this connection with ourselves and with nature, this is where the problem, I think a lot of the problems happen. And if we can reconnect back to nature, we reconnect back to our soul, to who we are. And I just think that's really, really, really important. So every day I am either out in my garden, or I go down to the river. I could go for a walk. I try and do something just so that I can so the reconnecting with nature is reconnecting back to me, which is just
Yeah.
really, really important.
And that does resonate with me because you know, I, I am part of the digital world, so I know in a way I'm kind of working within the problem itself, trying to
Me too. Yes.
gardening. But at the same time, there's just, and I've noticed it over the past decade, that the patience has fallen off. People have no patience because you're being served things every like 5 seconds that are like jumping around the screen, sort of crowd out your attention. You don't even know what you've just sort of digested or seen. It's
Yes.
just something there. Whereas with a garden, like you can't rush it. And I know the irony of garden rescue, whereas in an hour we go from nothing to something. But actually leaving those gardens with people and saying to them, they're going to change throughout the seasons. And especially with my plant palette that I use, I focus heavily on what we call succession planting. So
Mm.
4 seasons of the year, 12 months of the year. Every month I want something of interest in the garden, even if it's one thing in December or January, and then there's 8 things maybe in June. But the succession is that when one thing finishes, another thing starts. And it's advanced, it's complicated. But once you get a good designer or plants person to do that for you, then you look out in December and suddenly you've got a witch hazel in bloom, or you look out in March and you've got spring bulbs, or you've got something going on.
Mm.
And that helps to sort of build patience and excitement that seasonality and change is going to happen. Whereas for other forms of design, and I always use interiors, and there's no disrespect to interiors whatsoever, you design your interior, and for the most part, it's static. You might have a house plant you move around, you might have trinkets and ornaments or things that move, but for the most part, the bare bones are fixed, in
Yeah.
particular with the colour. Whereas in the garden, it's not. So you move
Mm.
through the 4 seasons, the colour changes, the texture, and then it repeats and morphs. Things self-seeds. The whole garden's kind of on a journey with you, bubbling along in the background. And that's what really appeals to me about garden design is I'll give you this today, but in 3 years it's going to be slightly different. And
Mm.
you'll
Mm.
grow with it. You'll have changed with it as well. It's not fixed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I love about it too. And then, like, this time of the year, which is now at the beginning of February, I race to the garden centre and find something that's got colour in it, and just I just shove it in, because it's like, oh, it's just there's not much. I'm looking at it now and just thinking, oh, the poor thing looks so sad. But anyhow. So I don't have any elegant way to segue into the questions that I ask on the Colour Couch. So this is going to be a very clunky segue in, because I was trying to think, how can I do this? But what what is your earliest colour memory as a child? Do you remember?
Yeah, and it's going to sound a bit weird, but my one of the earliest colour memories I have is that my nana had these 4 sets of the old-fashioned Tupperware cups that
Oh
used to clip.
yes.
Now we're talking like she must have bought them in the 60s or 70s, and it was when all those sort of like mustardy, khaki,
Yeah.
browny, sort of petrolly blue steel colours were in, and there was a green, a brown, a
And an
mustardy,
orange, a burnt orange.
burnt orange, and this like sort of milky steely blue, and they all clipped together. And whenever we went out in the car or went out for days out, my nan would have these Tupperware sort of mugs and then this flask of coffee. And I always looked at them because they were all a different colour, whereas everything else in my nan's house, and my house growing up, in the kitchen or the lounge, everything would be similar colours. Cushions on the sofa would all be the same colour. Cups in the kitchen would be the same colour. Plates would all be matching, whereas these cups were all the
Mm.
same, but different. And I always just remember looking at them thinking, oh, just look at how if you change them round, you get different combinations of colour in slightly
Uh-huh.
different sort of tones. And obviously, I didn't realise as a kid. I just thought these look quite fun. But as I've grown as a designer, I keep thinking back to that, going, oh, was that like the earliest moment of like contrast colour and seeing how colours look as a pair, as a three, and then
Yeah.
round. So
Yeah.
yeah, Tupperware mugs.
Is it funny? Is it because yeah, Tupperware? Because my mum had Tupperware when I was a kid, and I'd have to say they were really the leaders in using color because where all other kitchenware, everything was, white, like even Corningware, wasn't it? Everything was white plates, everything white. And they were the ones that were really quite bold in their color usage. I wonder if I must find out and see if that's because they wanted to maybe stand out from everything else and not look the same.
Yeah, I think probably you're right. And also it's plastic, so people, I'm guessing, would have been quite snobby about plastic cups, but you give them a crazy colour and all of a sudden it's a little bit more kind of, there's something else going on with them.
Yes,
But
yes, and you only take them out on a picnic because that's when you
yeah,
use them. But
yeah.
oh, that's funny. Um, so what does color mean to you?
That's a really good question. And I always think of colour, and you've mentioned it as an emotion, but as a mood, as a feeling. Like the beauty of colour and scent, I suppose, is that you know instantly whether you like it or dislike it. You look
Mm,
at something and you either go, that's all right, or I'm not sure. And you see people picking clothes or picking paint in DIY stores, and they zoom in on like one certain colour and they kind of float around it. That people tend not to jump around the colour wheel too much, but for me, colour is really exciting because it can change your mood, and especially with plants, because in a garden you might have 30 or 40 different species, and you can play with the colour wheel to not only utilise gorgeous plants but give a feel even before you've smelt them, seen them, touched them. And it's that emotion of using colour like to lift you up, to calm you down. If you're feeling sad, certain colours might make you feel a little bit less lonely. And a lot of it is subconscious. And I don't
mm,
think a
mm,
lot of people really pay too much attention. They just go, I like that, I don't. But they never scratch away and say, well, why? Like,
mm.
give it an adjective to describe it. And then some of my clients will say, why do you love pink? Oh, I just do. Come on, a little bit more, scratch away. What is it? Oh, well, I remember going to the fun fair when I was 6. It was the
Yeah,
best day of my life. Right, that's why you like pink. Candy
yeah,
floss. We
that's a
get
personal association. Yeah.
yeah. So for me, colours like scratch away a little bit and find out why it makes you feel that way.
No, absolutely. Well, this leads on perfectly. Do you have a favorite color or a color that you're drawn to? And why is that?
I do. I've got two, but the main colour that I love, but I will never wear it because it doesn't suit me at all, is vibrant orange. So, burn your eyes out, Seville orange,
Oh, not this kind
green.
of orange?
Yeah. So that kind of really bright, thick
Yeah.
orange. And a lot of people, especially in the garden, will turn their nose up at orange.
Oh,
It's
really?
yeah, and they just kind of shy away from it. It's too bold, it's too brash, they don't know what to do with it.
Right. Well, that's probably
Yellow,
the answer.
yeah, yellow not so bad. Red people tolerate. Orange, it's like, but for me, orange is like that. It's that warmth. It's a very, I think it's a heavy colour, isn't it? It's not a colour that you can make translucent very easily without it turning into like pastely.
Yeah, straight away it goes into a peach or an apricot, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I'm talking about real heavy orange. And I just love the fact that it's so bright and in your face, and it commands your attention. Whereas sometimes with, say, the pink and red part of the colour wheel, or especially like purple leading into like indigo, they can quite easily settle in a garden, especially amongst green or
Mm,
dark. Whereas orange, you stick orange against black, wow, that's like pops out. It contrasts against blue and purple. It just jumps out, and in like interior design, very first house I bought, I painted my entire office bright orange, like
Wow.
burn your eyes out, because I thought when I'm in here working or studying or whatever, I want this to be such a step change to the rest of the house. I don't want this to be relaxing. I don't want to feel like I could just fall asleep. I want to feel
Mm.
like, I've had 3 shots of espresso
No,
and then,
yeah, yeah.
and you'll see it, or people have commented in my designs that I, especially with show gardens, love what we call the hot colour planting palette.
Mm.
Whereas a lot of people, it's like pinks, purples, or blues with a little bit of white, bit of yellow. But I focus in on that yellow, orange, red, and I love the analogous colours, yellow, orange, red, to really like vibe up a garden. Not everywhere, but there's always like a hotbed that I will put somewhere where I think this is the exciting part of the garden. I want you to go and feel lively. If I want you to feel relaxed, I won't do that. I will put you somewhere a bit calm, a bit more monochromatic. But more often than not, I will find somewhere where I can go, this is like either really hot, or we've got a dynamic contrast between orange and blue or yellow and purple. And I want you to
Mm,
feel
mm.
like something's, even when I'm moving out, something's happening.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I'm really excited by it. So,
It's like the part you're getting the party started, aren't you?
so like orange is my absolute favourite colour in the world. However, blue is probably my preference, like for clothing. And if I want to feel calm, blue's the colour.
And which
Blue,
kind of blue?
so I love like duck egg blue, pale blues,
Right.
cyan. Still quite, not the dark blues, but still on that bright spectrum. But blue is like my favourite colour to wear. That's when I feel most relaxed and kind of balanced. But if I want to get really relaxed and feel really grounded, super dark greens, emeralds, khakis. And a lot of my house now has that colour palette where rooms will feel really quite dark with the colour palette, but then I'll use different textures in the room to give a bit of a pop to them. But if I want to
Mm.
feel relaxed, I want to feel green, khaki. Like that to me is like being wrapped up in a nice blanket.
Yeah, nice. Nice, nice. Well, did you know that orange is my favorite color as well? And
Who knew?
it's the calendula. It's the
uh,
calendula flower.
yeah,
So I grew loads of these from seeds last year and the year before, because they're not in fashion at the moment, this particular one. So yeah, trying to get hold of the seeds and grow them. But this is the really bright orange, and so we're both orange lovers.
yeah. And another, since you've mentioned plants, fabulous plant, easy to get hold of, Helenium, Moorheim Beauty. It's got this like burnt orange outer petal. It then moves into bright orange and then yellow, and it looks like it's like burning embers. It's so bright orange. You'll easily grow it in Kent, and it's about a metre tall. So it's a great plant to drift through a flower bed.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
plants that do this. Love them.
yeah. And
Yeah.
especially like end of July, beginning of August, and a bit later, August to September, it's in its prime then, and it's really kind of giving life when everything else is being bleached out by the sun and fading back. So yeah.
Oh, I'll have to look out for that. Definitely, definitely, definitely. Um, so what do you think your life would be like without color?
Oh, I mean, it's easy to say that it would be really dull. I think I'll answer that in a slightly different way if that's okay. I think
Yep.
a lot of people, because why would you be trained in colour or design, know what colours they like but don't really understand why. And I know I've mentioned that before, but and then they kind of get stuck in, well, what's fashionable or what's on trend
Mm.
and what am I being sold at the moment? And so people repeat those because they feel safe with them. Like, well, someone's come up with this colour selection, so if I go with it, it'll work for me.
Yeah.
But that to me is almost the same as saying, well, I don't really have any control over the colours of my interiors or garden or car or clothes. So for me, like, colour's really important. And without it, it removes some of my agency and choice and how I feel and how I like present myself. And I am uh, uh, anti-conformist, I suppose you'd say, someone that has always danced to the beat of their own drum. So for me, colour is important because it allows me to carry on choosing who I am, how I want to feel, And so without it, if I was just stuck with what's on trend or what
Mm.
Instagram's serving me or what the magazine's serving, I never look at that. Do you know, I don't have a Pinterest board. I don't look for inspiration based on what other people are telling me I should do. I understand the colour wheel, I understand plants. So my inspiration is usually, well, what's the feel that I want? Or this client wants to do this, and how do I use my knowledge to do that? Rather than just going looking at other people and how have they done it. I want to start from scratch because that's part of my design process. Same with, decorating a house, choosing the colour of a car. It's not what's the most popular colour, what have I seen? It's I want to see all the colours and then pick based on how I feel. So to loop back round and answer your question, if I couldn't do that, I'd feel there was a big part of my life that was missing, and I'm not sure I'd be able to design as effectively as I do if there wasn't colour in the mix of the choices I make.
Yeah, yeah. So were you ever scared of color or afraid of color, or have you always loved it?
I've always loved it, but I would caveat that by saying, although I loved it, I didn't always understand it. So,
Yeah.
like, especially with like fashion and hair color, do you know, I've had blue hair, green hair, pink hair, and I look back sometimes and think, oh, that's a poor choice because it doesn't suit you or it doesn't suit that period in your life. But I knew I loved color, but until I really learned about design and the color wheel and how you can blend colors and the emotions of them, when I understand that, suddenly it's like, I get it now, and
Mm.
I make more discerning choices over colour. And that's where I think a lot of beginner and intermediate gardeners struggle, is they might understand the plants, they might understand design principles, but then they go to buy the plants or source them, and they think of colour and they go, well, I'll have a bit of this here and a bit of that, but it's just guesswork, rather than if I'm going to have white amongst these colours, it's going to wash them out. So you might not understand that, but if you don't, then you're going to pick them and then think, oh, it looks a bit wishy-washy.
Yeah,
I want,
without knowing the logic and the rationale behind it. Yeah.
yeah, and being able to move from colours in the garden. You don't have to follow the colour wheel, but you certainly don't
Mm.
have to put contrasting colours next to each other everywhere and totally clash. That there needs to be some logic, because if not, the subconscious will feel awkward. As I said
Yeah.
earlier on,
Yeah.
you don't want that in any home or garden space. Do you know, I can't think of any design I've ever done where someone said, I'd love to feel awkward in this part of the garden. So,
Yeah, awkward and uncomfortable.
yeah, yeah, can you make me feel on edge? Well, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, well, if someone did, you could just it could even be for some people that a whole red garden would make them feel on edge. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah, you
And
could
there's only kind of this a colour combination that I try and avoid in garden design, which is that really dark glossy green and bright vibrant red, like holly. Because I always think, although I love holly as a plant for wildlife, it's just reminds me of Christmas. And whenever I see red and green, I see it as such a bold colour, not so much contrast, but it's a bit of a clash. So I always use it really sparingly, if not at all, because I just find that is a bit too bold and in your face. So they're the only two colours that when I see them on a planting palette or someone else has designed something, I think, oh, I would have maybe added a bit of yellow or orange to soften that red. But red and
mm.
green together I find quite,
But they're
I suppose, a bit
complementary on the color
artificial.
wheel, and they create that contrast, don't they?
Yeah. And that's it. It's that kind of personal preference for everyone, but it reminds me of Christmas, and I just think it's a little bit kind of a bit brash.
I think if it's that real strong green, the really strong red, because if it was a softer red, which obviously then we're going into the pinks, but in a
Yeah,
softer green, then it's not so, I guess it's not so intense.
yeah.
The saturation isn't so yeah, such a high saturation. Oh,
Hmm.
interesting, interesting. Um, so do you have a favorite place that's colorful that you've visited or that you know of that you'd like to share? Because if there's someone who's watching this or reading, um, and there might be somewhere, it might not even be in the UK, but there's somewhere that you've been or you've visited that was just incredible with colour, and there's loads of amazing colourful gardens.
Yeah, I mean, the probably the most obvious, and because everyone who visits it says, "Oh my God, I've never seen colour like it," is the Garden Margerel in Morocco, which
Yes.
sometimes referred to as the Yves Saint Laurent garden. Now, the beauty of that garden isn't just the fact that it's this really kind of modernist take on colour, but you've got these Margerel blue, as it's now known, walls, this really vibrant, saturated blue.
Oh, is that the Yves Klein blue?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you've got this like, it's, you can't avoid it. And I actually did a show garden a couple of years back using it because it was so vibrant. I thought I need the centre part of the garden to really pop out. But then you've got the contrast of loads of rills, which are like big rectangular ponds, pond plants, tropical planting, and then oranges and yellows. So you've got that dynamic contrast, which for people that haven't heard of that, dynamic contrast is when one colour makes the opposite colour feel more vibrant. They make each other look brighter than when you look at them separately. And in garden design, it's a really clever way to amp up colour association in the garden. So the Yves Saint Laurent Garden Margerel, does that really well, and it's so bold because the rest of Morocco are these earthy colours of like
Mm,
brick, terracotta, spices. We're all in that kind of browny yellow, orange, warm, warm, warm.
yeah.
Garden Margerel could be described as, I suppose, cold with the blue, but because it's so bright, it just completely stands out. But then in contrast to that, you've got a garden up in Scotland, you've got Benmore, which is kind of a replica of a Canadian stroke Chilean garden up in the middle of nowhere in
Mhm.
these mountains. And the colour is very limited there, but you've got every hue of like evergreen green. You've got different textures of the leaves of like pines, the redwoods, the Chilean shrubs, and then little pops of orange and red and yellow and pink that only really come out fleetingly in the summer. So the two completely opposite colour choices, one is like green saturation and the other one is contrast. But those two, when I've been to them, always make me feel like it makes you stop and consider colour. And I don't
Mm.
think most people normally would because it's such an extreme example of, one colour for Benmore, green, green, green. And then the second is Morocco, which is this contrast.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, no, a lot of people, I've been to Morocco a few times, and I still have not been to that garden. So it's on when I go back, it is like the first place I'm heading to because
Yeah.
everyone just raves about it. And there's one thing to look at it in pictures, but there's another thing to be there and
Yeah.
smell it and see it and experience it, isn't it? In if
It's,
you're lucky enough to, yeah, see it in real
yeah.
life.
And it's the fact that Morocco is, well, the cities are so busy, like Marrakesh, where the garden is, but it's so busy in Marrakesh. Then you get to the garden, and suddenly, although you're only like 2 roads away from all these Medinas, just
Mm.
goes really quiet because the absorption of all the plants and the sound, and it's a walled garden. Best time to go is definitely early doors, get up, get out. A, because of the heat, and secondly, this is a bit proper northern of me. There's a little French cafe there that does an amazing breakfast. So if you get there
Ah,
like whenever it opens, go and have the amazing mint tea, the little French patisserie breakfast. You'll feel very bougie, and then you can have a walk round when it's quiet before all the hordes of tourists arrive. And it feels like you're a million miles away from Marrakesh.
oh, brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, with the riads when it's just like a wall, and then you go through a little door, and then there's the courtyard, everything on the inside, with usually with the fountain plants, and then the whatever how many levels there are, and it's just the most quiet oasis. And then
Mm.
you walk out,
Yeah.
it's
And it's not for the faint of hearted. I think you need to go knowing that it's going to be busy and the culture is very, in your face.
sensory overload in
Yeah,
every.
sensory overload, and you are the alien there. So of course there's going to be attention and stuff. But the other thing, like with Morocco, in terms of garden design, is that it's like the classic place to go and see like Islamic Moorish formal gardens where things are laid out on an axis and they're symmetrical. And a lot of people poo-poo formal gardens is difficult. And they are high maintenance, but looking at Marrakesh, for example, most of those Riyadh gardens are formal, either Islamic or Moorish gardens, and just viewing the symmetry and how they've all been lined
Mm,
up with proportion and colour is a
yeah,
real eye-opener for people because you just don't see it very often. But when it's
yeah,
done in a classic sense, it's absolutely fantastic.
yeah. Let's do a tour there.
Gardens with Lee.
And then I'll take everyone, yeah, for the colour and the food.
Yeah.
We'll eat our way through. Oh, that'd be wonderful. Because I get, as you're saying that, it's like going, oh my God, I need to go. Brilliant, brilliant. So for anyone who is afraid of colour, so the majority of people that will be watching this and or reading is the, what I always call the everyday colour lover.
Yeah.
And my whole thing is to get the world to fall back in love with colour again. Like it's my big audacious goal. And so what would your number one piece of advice be? Now, Greg, who I recently interviewed, Greg Penn, Man with the Hammer, he gave about 5. They just came tumbling out and I wasn't going to stop him. So if you have more than one, that's fine. But, if someone was afraid of colour, I've had a lot of people say, oh, just start small, just start with something little. But if that was going to be your first thing, what would be something else that you could add to that?
So my main answer would be do a little bit of research, and that's not getting lost in a rabbit hole, but maybe read your book or watch my video. It's only 3 minutes on the colour wheel, and within a minute you'll at least understand what the colour wheel is and how colours relate. And by understanding that, you can start to then make decisions based on how you want to feel. You don't need to understand every association, but just understanding what the colour wheel is and how you can look at it and go, well, those contrast, those complement, those are tertiary colours. You can kind of work it all out yourself. But I wouldn't go small. Once you've done that step, I would pick a room in your house or a flower bed that you don't mind experimenting with. Downstairs toilet, perfect example.
Yeah, they always go bonkers, and that is the bonkers thing in the UK.
Yeah,
Completely quiet, pared back house. Walk into the downstairs loo, and
yeah, exactly, because it's one of those rooms, without getting too gross, you don't really want to relax. You don't want to sit there for hours and hours or whatnot. But it's a good little room in the house to play with colour. So do your research to understand the colour wheel, and then pick something on a feeling rather than a trend or what the homeware stores trying to push you down. And the second thing, and it's going to be really contentious, is move away from greys and beige. I am so bored of sadly watching people paint everything charcoal grey or beigey, wishy-washy colours just because your neighbour's done it or because you see TV. It's like, you've got one life, live it. Can we stop painting everything grey and calling it a foil? It's not a foil. It just sucks the life out of other colours, and we don't need to do it.
And it sucks the life out of us because it absolutely can drain us, and we think we're relaxing, but actually for the majority of people, it's draining us.
It's a really oppressive colour. Used well and wisely, got no problem with it. I would even go so far as to say, if you're going to paint something in your garden grey, just paint it black, because at least it's really bold, but do it really sparingly. Don't paint all your fence panels grey and then wonder why your plants look really naff. It's because you're focused to the most oppressive part of the garden. So yeah, get away from grey and beige, be bold, and if you don't like it, paint over it. I'm not saying be wasteful, but certainly do something and have an opinion on whether you loved it or didn't. It's a good talking point when you painted your downstairs toilet lime green because for you it felt exciting, but 2 years later you go, well, actually, I realised that I prefer blue more than green. I was always a perfect, I don't know why I did it. I would rather have that chat and someone explain why they've made a mistake with colour than go, oh, we just did everything beige and it was all grey. I just feel like, what a lost opportunity for some excitement.
Yeah, do you know what? If I came to your place and I went to the downstairs loo and it was all lime green, I would walk out and probably fall over because it would just completely just mess with my head. And I would walk back in like this. Yeah, it's amazing. Lime green just because of the amount of yellow and it's such a high intense color. Like it's the green. I always call lime green the alter ego of green because greens are normally relaxing and
Yeah,
very soothing and restorative, where lime green is just in your face. It gets your whole nervous system going.
yeah,
And I just thought, oh my gosh, yeah, I would struggle to even get out of the room. I
yeah.
had to send an SOS, come and get
It
me.
can even be
It
something.
really, yeah, it's a color I can't be around. It's interesting, isn't it?
It's interesting how colours have that reaction, but I would rather us have this chat about why it does that to you, but not to me, than us
Yes,
both. Oh well, we painted it white, you know.
yeah, yes,
And
yes.
for garden design in particular, if you're unsure about colours for your plants and you want to play it safe and you know go monochromatic, everything's pink, shades of pink. Take a piece of furniture like a bench, wooden bench, and paint it. Paint it orange or blue that pops out against the pink. You can always paint over it, but all of
Mm,
a sudden in the garden, rather than it being a one-hit wonder of pink, I see it and go, lovely, but it's 2 seconds I've gone. If we choose a bit of furniture or even some wooden posts and a board that have been painted a different colour, which I often do on the show, we can then start to see the association with colour, but it gives you a focal point and something interesting to go and
mm,
look
mm,
at.
mm, mm.
Safe, safe, safe.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Talking about the show, when do you actually record? When do you record? I'm assuming you record them over summer because that's
Yes,
when the
recorded,
plants, flowering plants are out, huh?
yeah, they recorded a year in advance. So this year's were filmed last year, and we filmed sort of from May through to September. Obviously, it's plant dependent because things go over, but we've got a fab
Mm,
horticulture team that help adjust our planting schemes based on what's readily available at the time, and so it's always a bit of a moving feast. But yeah, it's kind of an intense block of work in the middle of summer to
right.
get things done.
Yeah, because you get, I remember like last year, I think it was that you were just working in scorching hot days. And is it, do you work over 2 days and then it gets put down into an hour show?
Yeah. So the first day is really like the prep work, because it's a lot of work to do. Even in 2 days, it's a gargantuan task. There's a lot of
Oh,
clearing out.
those, you know that your landscape gardeners, I mean,
Mm.
they're pretty, I mean, they're spot on, aren't they? They're
For
good.
me, because they also get faced with all sorts of gotchas. Because whilst we've got a survey on the garden, you might suddenly dig down, like we did a few years ago, and find a full motorbike under the lawn, and you think, oh crap, we've only got one skip, and now we've got a motorbike, and suddenly got another ton of soil to find. So there's all these gotchas that pop up in the day.
Yeah,
Some are
yeah,
fixed,
yeah.
some aren't. Yeah, everyone works incredibly hard, and maybe I'm saying too much, but we work sometimes 12, 14-hour days on those two
Oh,
days to
you
get.
can tell because of the way that the light is. You can tell
Yeah,
that it's gone. Yeah, it's long. It's long. And you guys work hard. Yeah, you can see. Because even with my little pottering in my garden, I when I watch it, I just think, oh, these guys, apps, and then you're constantly lifting, constantly carrying. And
yeah.
I just think, my God, you must be absolutely cream crackered at the
Yeah.
end. Do you do one a week or one or
Do two a week. So
you
yeah.
do too? Yeah, but you don't know if you win or not.
No, well, if you don't win, you're still there.
Oh, of course you are. Of course
Yeah,
you are.
yeah. So yeah, we do two a week for.
Two a week, and here I am binging them, and I should actually pay them more
Ah!
respect, be more respectful, thinking, oh, wow. Sometimes you must go, oh, actually, I'm glad I haven't won because I can back off a bit and it's easier.
Yeah, and again, I have to be careful what I say, but there are
Of
some
course.
some client briefs, and you think like that's not my bag, or actually, Chris, Flo, Charlie, you're better placed for this one because that is not my strong point. And I am a big believer that you should play to your strengths, and unless you really have to work with your weaknesses, try and dodge them as much as possible. I'm not a believer in being perfect at everything. Find out what you're good at and
Yeah.
zoom in on it. And if you can't do other things, find other people that can.
Yeah,
Like,
no, absolutely. Because we're a team, aren't we? We're not, and And I think that's what I find with a lot of and like when you say, I shouldn't really say this, in the design industry, is that they think they have to do it all themselves and they think they have to know it. And there is this kind of not shame, but kind of I'm not as good if I can't do it all. And we're not meant to do it all. We're meant to like to bring in a team because there will be someone that can do it better, quicker.
Yeah.
And why not bring a whole, imagine if you guys had to do all the landscaping as well, and like, and the way that they do all the tiling. I mean, it is, and whoever that guy is with the long beard, forget his name,
Yeah,
that
Lee.
does all the routing and all the cutting. I
Yeah.
mean, his maths like is phenomenal. So it's an absolute teamwork. And I think that's what it is with any kind of design. Like I work with architects, interior designers, with like office fit outs and in the home and thing. And I always say that we're a team. It's not just that for you to think that you have to do it all yourself, that you have to know it all yourself. And I think if we let go of that pressure, then we'll be more inclusive and we get so much more. And at the end of the day, it's for the client. It's not about us getting our own needs met. It's being in service to them.
Yeah, it's not just an ego trip, but I do think that like the online digital world has a lot to answer for because it portrays people as being these one-stop machines, and a 60-second reel, especially of home makeovers, transformations, gut outs and refits. You're showing it in 60 seconds with one person kind of presenting or narrating, and you think, oh God, you've done all that. But actually, there's no way on earth you could do all that.
Yes.
But we're being sort of shown to almost like own the entire process and become the brand, become this one-stop shop. And it's totally unrealistic.
Yeah.
That leads to a lot of mental health issues that people say, well, people even said to me, oh, I watch you on TV and think I could never do all of that like you. And I said, well, I don't do all of it. Look, there's a full team there. I design it, I pick plants, but there's a hort lady or gent there that helps me with other plants because there's over 300,000 plant species. I don't know them all. Everyone in hort knows a certain chunk of them, but you need other people to be able to help you out. So don't think that because I'm on TV or I've got this successful YouTube channel that I'm doing everything as a one-man band. Like, of course not. It's unrealistic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And sorry about what I just did then. I was about to run out of power on my laptop, so I just had to put my power in, trying to do that very elegantly. Yeah, absolutely. And I actually get a lot of designers. I realize we're just going over a little bit. Are you all right to talk for a few more minutes?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, great, thanks. So, because I think this is a really important point. A lot of interior designer friends, a lot of my students, and I get people coming to me going, oh, can you just do this? Can you just give me a color palette for my home? And I said, well, actually there's a process. It's actually quite in depth. And they said, well, 60-minute makeover, they do that. I go, yeah, it's not 60 minutes. That's the length of the show. I said, it's the weeks. I mean, there's prep for weeks that goes on beforehand. It's all of that you just don't see. And I think there is a very much an unrealistic view on what that is. So I think that's a really good point to bring up.
I think as well, people see design as like, I can't really get my head around it, but gardeners and design as in like, well, I'm only asking for a favour, or well, you do this all the time, so you just be able to pull out a design for my new build garden because you must have hundreds. And it's like, yes, I do, but they're all the hundreds of bespoke, unique designs for those gardens. But there seems to be like this devaluing of design, horticulture, gardeners, artistry in general. It's like, well, I've seen this online and I just bought that, so can you give me that? Well, I can, but then you could just go and get anyone to give you that. Like, use my skills, and they're not free, and they shouldn't be free.
Yes.
Your design skills shouldn't be free because it's bespoke to you. And I'd love people to start to value gardening in general as a skill rather than just, oh, it's a man or a woman who will lift and shift plants and dig holes. It's not at all. That's like the final part of a process. But to understand your plants, your colours, your design, your landscaping, it's not a free skill. It's not something that we do because we can't do anything else. It's very considered. And Maybe
Absolutely.
sometimes the media kind of gives that view because of like 60-minute makeovers, garden rescue. It probably doesn't necessarily help, but at the same time, people just need to be a bit more considerate that I wouldn't ask an accountant to do my books for free
Yes, I
because
always say
you
that to
love
people.
numbers. You know, you love numbers. I love plants. Let's work for free. It doesn't
Yeah,
work that way.
yeah. I always get, so what colors suit me? What colors should I wear? And I always just go, I'm not Mystic Meg.
Yeah. Beige.
Not Mystic Meg. Yeah, and they go, well, why can't, well, you mustn't be very good at your job then. I remember
Yeah.
once I was in a women's networking meeting with women, like women, this is the thing, it's another soapbox, but women doing this to women. And she said to me, oh, so what color should I wear? And I said, well, that would involve a consultation with me. And because I said it's a 3 hour consultation, oh, well, you mustn't be very good then. And I just stood there and looked at her and I thought, oh, I had to hold it in because I thought I was just going to burst out laughing because I thought that's the most ridiculous thing. Because we're at a women's networking meeting. She's in business. Surely she must know that what she said to me is the very thing she doesn't like people saying to her.
Yeah. It's just
And that just,
projection.
and I just thought, yeah, like you don't go up to an accountant with a spreadsheet and go, tell me if that bottom figure is correct. And the accountant will go, well, I need to check all the cells. And you go, no, just tell me if the bottom figure is correct. It's that same thing. Just give me the answer. But it doesn't work that way. So if it gives you any comfort, Lee, it's in all industries, which is no comfort. But yeah, it's
I mean,
exactly the same.
yeah, I was joking with Chris Hull from Garden Rescue the other week about people getting in touch saying I'm on a budget, I've not got much money, and they prefix the email or the phone call or the message with this like story about how they've not got much money. And we both say, well, I appreciate that, but then design is not for you because
Yes.
it's not a free. If you're on a really tight budget, then you do it yourself or find someone that will just do whatever you ask. But don't come to a designer or a garden designer and then kind of make us feel like we have to work for free because of that position, the position that you're in. And in a way, it's like when people do that to me, and I'll get one every now and then. It's a good way for me to kind of like cleanse who I do and don't want to work for because I think,
Mm.
well, it's not the way to start off. And I also say to them, well, if you've only got X amount of money, go and read my website because the content is
Well, and do
free.
your courses.
Or pay
You've
for a course.
haven't you got a course for £27 that's got 9 designs in it?
No, I've got a course for £29 with 30
Oh,
full
well, there
small
you.
designs, all the planting plans. And then
How
if you want
amazing
to
is that?
learn how to design your garden in a weekend, that's about 69 quid.
Yeah,
Or you
yeah,
can do the
yeah.
full design course. You can do it at your own time. It's unlimited. You can log in for 10 minutes a day, 2 hours, whatever. But that's what I've been trying to sort of explain to the masses is I will teach you garden design. It might not be me in person. It might
Mm.
be you reading an article, watching a video, taking a course, or maybe you'll book me for a consultation. But everyone gets to learn from me if you want to. And there's just different tiers for it. So, unfortunately, you can't all come in at the top tier with 50 quid, but you can do a course. Do you see what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
just
no, I've
value
got
in.
I've got exactly the same. Exactly the same. I normally get, oh, I love your work. I've been following you for years, but I don't have any money. What can you help me? Yeah. So I guess that's because I think that's that adage, if you don't ask, you don't get. So and then I just explain to them what I have available because like with you just have options available and you just share what you have and our time isn't what's the word, infinite? It's not infinite. It's finite. And so yeah, we have to yeah, be careful how we use our time, don't we? So but talking about that, we have gone way
We've got
over.
way more.
Oh, that's a segue. There's a segue. Yeah, I really, 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 really appreciate. I do have one more, just one little more question. Which colourful person do you most admire, and would you love for me to interview on the Colour Couch series?
Uh, there's so many. Do you know, I'm just going to go for someone that people will recognise. Vivian Westwood.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
she's gone.
I know, but she would be,
I
if
can't
you could
I can't
do something
interview her.
posthumously, then that she would be the real
I really,
queen.
I really am not Mystic Meg. Like seriously, I really am not.
Someone living.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry, I should have said that. A
I'm
living
sorry,
person.
I misheard the question as like, who would you,
No, no, who
would,
would you that I could interview? Yeah.
oh, do you know, I don't usually bail on questions, but I
You know
couldn't
what
give
you
you an
can
answer.
do? You can think about it and send me an email.
Yeah,
And send me an
okay,
email. But there'll be someone when you get off, when we get off, you'll just go, oh,
okay,
now I know that's who I would have asked.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just let me know when we're send me an email and I'll add it on afterwards. So is
Will
there
do.
anything else that you would want to share or anything that I didn't ask or any kind of color message or anything that you would want to impart?
It's just going back to that research. So if you're nervous with colour or new to colour or you're getting bored of your beige walls or your lackluster garden, just take those tentative steps into understanding the colour wheel because then it will start to spark off all sorts of interesting feelings about colour and that will lead someone who is a bit nervous about colour to starting to see it in a different way. I think the colour wheel is your friend and you can just Google it and then start to research it and all of a sudden you'll look at colour with a bit more of a discerning eye.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved all the little tangents that we've gone on. We've even been on a few soapboxes as well, haven't we? But I'm always known for a soapbox moment. Um, but yeah, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy. God, the time has absolutely flown by. So yeah, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.